to another exciting Cacoa tea. It's a wonderful Sunday evening, and my two beautiful guests join us. They're on either parts of the country or of the world, I should say. One is in Canada, and the other one is in the heat. I want to say good afternoon to Ayanda, who's in Canada. Hi, Ayanda.
Hi.
And good afternoon to Kea, who is in the south, the very south, Miami. How are you, Kea?
Hi, Sunshine State right here. Sorry.
Oh my gosh. And we have an exciting show planned for you this evening. What we like to do is we like to wait until people start getting on. So, we do a little small talk, to warm up the people a little bit, just to get ready for persons to come on. We also want to encourage people during the broadcast to feel free to ask questions. If we're able to answer, we'll answer. If not, we'll tell you, we'll check you back later. All right. So we're going to be having a very good conversation for you this evening. I can hear a little feedback. I don't know. I'm hearing myself repeating it. Somebody listening to me? Are you listening to me? Are you watching me, Ayanda checking me out on Facebook?
I don't have it open, but
I catch you. But okay.
Oh,
So,
actually, you're right. Hold on. Let me close my Facebook. Is that better?
That's much better.
Okay.
Awesome stuff. Okay, so all of us have our mugs, right? Ready for your Cacoa tea, our specialist mugs. I'm interested to know the story behind your mug. Kea, what does it say?
I can't adult today.
What's the story behind that?
Not much of a story other than my mom and I are huge tea drinkers, and she likes massive mugs. So we went on a mission to find the biggest mug possible, and I saw this. And we also like puns and sayings, so I had to get this, and it was just perfect, and I claimed it. So.
And what's the story behind your mug?
Mine, I think there's not really a story, it's just more so my kitchen as an adult was in a collection of basically like, hand-me-downs. My sister gave me this, my brother gave me this, my mother gave me that. And this set was my first thing that I bought for myself. So it was like, 8 mugs and 8 matching plates and, bowls. And so this is like me being an adult, I guess, for the first time.
Wow. That is awesome. Awesome stories, guys. My mug is my cousin's mug. Which I'm boring. So I'm boring my cousin.
Indefinitely.
Indefinitely. So that's the story behind my mug today. Okay, so we're gonna get started. Ayanda, if those of you who don't know is or you're just logging in, he is marketing communications coordinator, and a mom. Kea is the director of operations, and she's also the office manager and a mom. If you want any of their social media handles, you just check the box above. So right above the box, you can actually get their information. Ayanda is not one that's on social media too much, so you'll probably see her stuff blank. And Kea, you'll get Kea's Instagram and Kea's Facebook. And I'm gonna give you guys a little rundown as to who these two women are, how I know them, like I do all of my shows. I like to start off, sort of letting people know how I know my guests, or how if me and my guests have met. I've actually known Ayanda for years. She was one of my first set of friends that I made, or I should say Dominican friends, when I started living here in Canada. And it was so funny because we got very close, and then we grew apart, and then we got very close again. So it's like, I think whatever is going on in our lives, it's okay for us to separate from each other and deal with our stuff, and then come back. And it's funny because we keep coming back into each other's lives, and it's very weird, but it happens, and we love each other, and we're just gonna keep loving each other and keep being in each other's lives until we have to not be in each other's lives again, right?
I would say like a season, a lifetime, so we go through our seasons. So
Yeah,
It's
and
growing.
it's a great friendship. I've wow, shit, I have so many memories with Ayanda. It's too numerous to mention. I don't even want to get into it because if I do, I'll be
Let's
putting my business
not, you know,
outside.
I don't think all of it can be mentioned.
And I met Kea through mutual friends in Dominica. She just moved back, and she was, you know, really like fun and everything, and only to find out a few months later she's moving away. So it was like she moved in and was moving out. But we stayed in touch. We were each other's friends on Facebook, Instagram, and just stayed connected. And one of these people I've never lost touch with. She has a love for paintings. That's why she's sitting in front of her painting. I know a few people who are actually holding some of her paintings hostage. I will not say any more about that. That's it. And I'll just give you a brief rundown. Kea manages 3 Remax brokerages in Florida, one of which is the largest Remax in Broward County. She specializes in business management, startup consulting, and nonprofit sponsorship. Kea is a mom to 2 children, one of whom was diagnosed in 2013 with autism spectrum disorder. And Ayanda, who joins us as well, has always been an entrepreneur with a background in marketing and communications. She attributes her success to maintaining, nourishing, and sometimes even reviving relationships she has cultivated into a thriving network. She's also a mom of a beautiful daughter, and she lives a natural lifestyle. You see the kink in her hair? Mm-hmm. So these are our 2 guests. Today, we're going to start off the conversation with something that has been daunting on me, I should say. One of the biggest issues is with me is text messaging, WhatsApp messaging. Back in the day, it was BBM,
Right?
WhatsApp.
MSN, Messenger, hello.
Oh my
Yeah,
God, like I was like a
right?
that's yes. MSN definitely all the Hotmail crew out there. Whoop whoop. I'm no longer a Hotmail person. I guess that kind of says how old we are. High five
Right?
and
Oh,
then
Mhm.
yeah, right. But have you ever gotten a text message and completely misinterpreted the message because you associated the message probably with a tone? Like for example, you completely get mad at your partner because his response was not what you expected, or you properly put a tone to his response to something like he probably just said okay, and you're like, just okay? Like you're not just gonna say okay, and he's probably just saying okay because he's busy doing something and he can't really get into the details of it with you right now, so he just says okay. Or the person says never mind, you're like, why did you say never mind? Like I'm trying to have a conversation with you and you telling me to never mind, and you totally like, and the person probably just does not want to continue having that specific conversation, or it's not the time and place for it. But you don't know, on the other end, you've just said you just were ready to blow everything into out of proportion, or something like cool, cool. You just answer cool, and you just toned that cool, and you're like, cool, Negro, you're not hearing me? Like, how you just tell me cool? Like, I'm trying to have an argument with you and you're telling me cool.
yeah. No,
Or
it doesn't work when, especially with slang. For example, you know how we say nonsense. Imagine texting somebody nonsense. It sounds like you're telling them what they say not making any sense. But you just
Yeah,
say it a pasa, but it don't work in text. So yeah.
and honestly, sometimes too, like just reading, like you can have a sentence read 2-3 different ways, because there's no such thing as like grammatically incorrect or whatever when you're texting. So there's no commas for you to know, oh, they meant I'll do it. How about they meant like someone, you could say I'll do it, like meaning I'll do it, or like I'll do it, or so depending on how you read it, you might read attitude into that, and the person on the other hand is saying something so Like
Completely
it's
different.
Completely different.
nonchalant. Yeah, in my relationship with my partner, we actually have a if we know that we're arguing or whatever, we do it either on the phone or face to face, so that we could actually have a reasoning. For me personally, because I'm communications, I'm a writer. I actually will write all the negative things out first, and then pick up the phone to call. So I've already vented, so to prevent that from taking place.
Now,
What do
now,
you,
do you guys prefer to text or you prefer to call? Would you say you're text people or you're call people? Because I know, Kaya, in your line of work, you're probably faced with a lot of the texting and the calling, and when they did not call when they should have called, or when they did not text or they should not have
yeah.
texted.
Text and tones work both ways, negatively and positively, in relationships as well as in business, especially in 2018. A lot of clientele, well, with what I do, it's a lot of real estate agents that are involved in people's personal life, because obviously you're bringing someone to buy a home. That's a very personal thing. That's one of the most major decisions you're going to make next to getting married. So a lot of people will say, I don't want any calls, or I don't want any emails, or only text. And because it's 2018, a lot of people, a lot more than you think, say that they only want a text. They don't want a call or an email. And then you have some agents that will be like, but that's so impersonal, or you can't get the right idea across. And I've had incidences where the wrong tone was taken based on a text message back and forth with my agents and their clients, and it gets blown out of proportion to the point where people want to throw the whole deal away. They don't want to continue with the client, and it's about to actually crash and burn their own business deal. So, and I'm about to ask Ayanda what she thinks about this. What I have told a lot of my people is, pick up the phone. If after the first couple text messages it even seems like that, do one of two things: pick up the phone, or if you've known this person, let's say, has been really insistent, they don't want to call, send a voice note. Because at least in a voice note, they can hear your tone and they know how you're coming across. And that worked for both personal and business.
Yeah, I definitely agree. In business, when I consult a lot, so that's actually exactly what you said is what I would recommend. So after the first, second text, email, where you think like, hey, this is like completely going left, pick up the phone, a quick 5-minute conversation. And you know what? It actually does a lot to build rapport. A phone call, a 5-minute phone call where you can hear my voice, you can hear me being genuine. Early out, like when I was in high school, I worked at a call center, and they used to say, don't pick up the phone unless you're smiling, because the person can hear the smile. But the opposite is also true. They can hear the frustration, the frown, or the whatever. And so if you call someone and you're like, hey, I feel like you're misinterpreting my tone. That happens a lot with text messages or emails. It'll go a long way. And that phone call, that 5-minute, 2-minute even phone call will could be the one and only. And then moving forward, you can continue the text messaging, and that'll just change the tone of the conversation moving forward. You know what I mean? Also with girlfriends, I had a situation with my girlfriend, and that was funny because I was like, she just completely just misunderstood what I was saying, and it's kind of like what I was saying. So she's reading it with attitude, and I'm totally like, hey, I'm not giving you attitude over here. Like, that's not what's happening. And then exactly what you said, Kay, I just sent her a voice note, and I'm like, what's happening right now? Because this is how, and I read her the message. I'm like, are you reading the same message? Like, this is what I said, but how I said it, not how you read it. So exactly. Yeah, like
that exact same thing happened to me with my sister. I wrote something very short, and it wasn't like I meant anything, and it was completely opposite of what I was, how she took it. And she was like so angry. She sent me like a paragraph. And when I saw the paragraph, I was just like, whoa, that's not what I meant. I unfortunately, I did not pick up the phone and call, but I sent her a private message, saying, hey, this is not what I meant. I actually meant this, and I would never say that, that's hurtful, and I'm sorry, I love you, blah, blah, blah.
Oh my God. And I'm sorry goes a long way. Take your ego out of the situation, say sorry, even if you're not wrong, just to get over the hurdle and be able to get to the root of the issue, you know, because sometimes people are dealing with their own thing. That's why they're hearing what
true.
they thought you said, you know?
So true.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, and say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Not, I'm sorry you took it that way. That's like the worst apology.
Yeah, that's condescending, right?
I'm sorry you took it that way.
Yeah.
What sort of impact would you guys say that texting has had on probably a personal interaction, like just communicating with, let's say, your partner, your immediate partner? You know, do you get into a lot of trouble because of texting more than when you call?
I'll go first. 15 years married in. It's honestly, it's 2018, and it's surprising the things that seem to hold more weight, I guess you could say. For example, that if we don't text at least once during the day, like it will be like, what's wrong? Like, how did something go wrong today? Was your day not a good day? And that's a new thing. That's honestly a new thing, because obviously we didn't have communication like that when we were younger, where you would have to be in communication every single minute of the day. But yeah, nowadays relationships are in a way where you need to be plugged in at least somewhat, if not a lot more, because otherwise people are wondering like, why aren't you plugged in? Why aren't you checking in almost? Because you have this thing on you all day, basically carrying around with you. So how do you explain that I can't send a quick text? You know what I mean? So it does seem to hold a lot more weight in relationships. My advice would be to kind of not let it, in that you have to learn the person that you're with, instead of having this generalized theory where it comes to, okay, you have a phone, you should be able to text. Well, not everyone's as plugged in as others. Some people are every day, wake up, check their social media, answer every text message right away. Some of us are not like that. For example, very often, if I can't hit the voice note and dictate that text, it's not getting sent. Like, I'm super busy. I might read your text message and I might say, I'm gonna text you back, and never get around to it. So you really do have to know the person that you're with and the relationship that you're in, and try not to apply these generalized, things about relationships which exist today. But it would be a lie to say that, with the modern technology that we have today, that people don't expect that. It's an expectation that you're going to have this constant contact via text, and I'm just the worst at that. So.
I feel like for me, my partner, he calls me. Both of us work for ourselves, so we can talk all throughout the day. We're always on the phone. For me, though, I'm like a super researcher, so I blow up his phone like, oh, check out this article. Look at this thing I just read. I just read this. Read this. Whatever. I'm always blowing him up on that. And we could be on the phone, just hung up off the phone, and I'm still like sending him. Sometimes I catch myself and I'm like, oh shit, I'm blowing you up and you're in a meeting. I'm sorry. Like, but because we're both phone people, like actually like talk on the phone people, we have less of the issues that some people may have where it comes to texting. I think my friends and maybe family members might say that like we maybe have more of the miscommunication, especially the old people, right? Because like my mom's phone will be on cap lock, and I'm like, why are you yelling? Like, she doesn't get that caps is yelling, and she's like, what are you talking about? I just learned how to text, So I think
with me personally, though,
more so than with my partner,
It's funny you say that. With me, my communication with my partner is mostly text messaging than anything else. It's always been that way, even with the distance. It's always been that way. It's just if I sense a tone, or if he senses a tone, the question marks comes, like question mark, like like, what do you mean? So we understand now that the question mark is, do I sense a tone? Is there a tone? Is there?
Cool.
And that gives time for us to just clear the air and say, hey, it's nothing. I'm just saying, you know, And sometimes now and again, we pick up the phone and we'll actually call and whatever. But we usually call when we have something to say, you know, like when I say like, oh, he's probably thinking of doing this, or I'm probably thinking of doing that. And that's when we really find the need to call. The text messaging works because of his line of work. He can just send me a text and I'm on there and I'll respond, and sometimes I'm breastfeeding, and you know, so
Yeah.
it just works better. But not saying that it hasn't gotten us in trouble in the past. When our relationship was fairly new, I completely misinterpreted a text that he sent to me, and then it was BBM because we started on BBM. And when I saw the message, I thought he was saying to me, I really did think that he was saying to me that he kind of sort of liked this other girl. Like that's how I interpreted it.
Okay, juicy now. Let me take a step.
Oh no.
I was like, so I completely thought that he was saying he liked this other girl when he was saying that he liked the other girl he liked was me, right?
Oh.
So, so I
Funny,
yeah.
I was saying, funny enough, another thing about texting and tones is with the cell phones, and you know, like there's always a record of your conversations and whatnot. And a lot of people in relationships will feel the need to go through their partner's phone. And there's a very, very big opportunity for you to misinterpret somebody else's interaction with someone else, because you don't know how I talk to that person. Like me and Jael, our relationship is maybe not even in English sometimes, like, you know, and the way that you talk to your partner, you guys have your little codes that you've figured out over the years, or, you know, somebody might just always call everybody, in all females in their life, babe. But now your man's looking at that like, why is this guy calling you babe? Meanwhile, it's, you know, it's just being misinterpreted. It's really just being misinterpreted.
I have a husband who's very much like that. We actually are both like that. If you're just a layperson reading either one of our phones, well, first of all, I always say, if you have to check your partner's phone, you have a bigger problem.
That's true.
For the moment you have to be checking that, you have a bigger problem going on. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is, and you need to check yourself. But we're both like that, and his dad is also like that. He calls everyone hun, love, sweetheart, babe.
Right.
If you look at even my Facebook, when I'm commenting, everything is love, babe, hun, and that's how I just talk to people. So if someone looks at your phone, they're gonna start, you know, reading into it. So that's a serious issue that can be caused. But yeah, mine learned the hard way. Call me. We don't text. If we text each other, it's like to send a quick joke, like what you do, Ayanda. Like, I saw this link, it's really fun. But other than that, we pick up the phone and call up because, you know, things can get misinterpreted. But we're just also a little old school. We're not very good with the texting.
Okay,
He's even worse than me.
Yeah.
So the bottom line of things is that you're gonna keep texting, because I mean, social media is there, and we're slowly evolving. Time is changing. More and more people are wanting that non-phone call. But when you sense there's some sort of agitation, or somebody may have misunderstood something that you said, instead of fighting back and forth on text, pick up the phone. Pick up the phone, send a voice note, and say, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean this. You know, you took it like this, but I really didn't mean it. I meant, this is what I meant. And be clear and precise so that people don't get misunderstood or misunderstand anything that you're saying. And you don't end up breaking up with your partner because of some stupid nonsense that just popped up. We're getting some interactions here. Martin is saying sometimes it's so much quicker to just call.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we also want to say hi to the other folks.
Me, after, you know, the BlackBerry phones, and it actually had the keyboard on the phone, and they were like so perfect. I could like do it with one hand. Then now I have this big tablet for a phone. It's inconvenient to like text while I'm doing other stuff. It really is like just more convenient sometimes to just pick up the phone and call.
It takes longer to text sometimes. It really does.
And then your phone predicts the text and they're wrong. Like, no, I didn't mean that. I'm trying to say,
God, you know? I meant to send my mom WhatsApp one time and it ended up sending her ass up. Like, that is just not what I meant. No.
Or I'll tell you, my name in text messages, like sometimes it changes to Carl. So sometimes sometimes I'll be talking to somebody and giving them my email address and it changes to Carl. So and at the time I only knew one Carl, that was Carl Nassif. So I was like, they're gonna think I'm talking about Carl. so, so you just have which be so careful and mindful of it and know when is the right time to pick up the phone and call.
Okay, my daughter just wants to say a quick hello and then she's going back upstairs.
Hi.
Say hi.
It's Wonder
Hi. Okay, now go back up. Go back up.
Okay, so we're gonna fast track now. Conversation discuss autism. And one of the things that
Okay. Sorry, we have someone else joining us here. She said she just wants to watch, so we'll just let her watch.
Okay, one of the things that we want to discuss also today is autism. It is Autism Awareness Month, and I think it's important that we bring up topics of that. You know, we could educate people. We could probably some of it might be our personal opinions, and not necessarily from a professional standpoint in terms of an actual doctor or whatever it is. But we all face with life's issues, and I feel like we should have a say and we should be able to speak on certain things. And one of the things that we want to talk about or touch today is autism. And I don't know if you viewing are aware of what autism is or no. One of my favorite shows now is The Good Doctor. It is about an autistic surgeon, and I absolutely love that show. Religiously watch it. However, when you research what autism is and what causes autism, I've gotten so many different things coming out of so many different places, and still not really getting the answer as to what the hell is autism. Based on the researchers out there, some of them say that autism can be caused from maternal illness, advanced parental age at the time of conception, probably extreme prematurity, low birth weight, mothers exposed to probably high levels of pesticide, air pollution, prenatal vitamins like folic acid. Now, Kea joins us as a mom who has a personal knowledge of what autism is because it's affected her life. And the life of her child and her family on a whole. And Ayanda can shed some light on this because Ayanda has completely chosen the natural way of living, as in she will do a homeopathic remedy before she even considers taking a pill, right? So they can share, their opinions as it pertains to that. But we're gonna get into talk to Kea first. Kea, as it relates to you, your son started exhibiting signs of autism. When did you actually start seeing changes in your son?
Okay, so with my son, I was in the British Virgin Islands. That's where both my kids were born, actually. And I would say that he was reaching all of his milestones. Everything was going great up until around just after 18 months. And that is when I would say 2 to 3 weeks after his 18-month milestone is where I started noticing very, very minor changes at first, and then gradually they got more and more glaring to me personally. At the time, with both my kids, I became a stay-at-home mom for both my kids, with my daughter for the first 2-3 years, and with my son, I had to stay with him home longer with his condition. So I was at home hands-on to basically be able to see any minor changes. It fell right when he had his 18-month MMR vaccination. So the timing for me was right at the same time. As to whether or not that was the cause, there is a lot of research that has gone into it extensively. They have said that what they call the regressive type of autism actually starts at 18 months, between 18 months and 2 years. So they are saying that is why there's so much of an association between vaccines and autism, because the time when the disorder actually starts showing is the same time as when people go for these vaccinations. And the reasoning behind it is that as the child grows, your brain, your neurons, all of that starts developing, and your brain continues to develop at a certain pace, which is why, they promote things like early childhood education and so on, because your brain is making connections at a certain pace between the age of 1 year to 3, 1 year to 4. And autism is a mental disorder. So when it starts showing its signs, it's the same time as those vaccinations. As to whether there's a correlation or not, I do not propose to be any expert in that field. I was basically given a choice. I call it a choice because it's so much expense to doing all the genetic testing, all of that for you to figure out what in your individual case caused your child's autism, and then the cost of therapy. At the time, it was a choice for me. I had to either pick finding out what caused it or pick getting him the help. And I obviously went with getting him the help. So I personally did not go into any in-depth testing of his chromosomes and all of that. It's very, very intense, very, very in-depth, and very, very expensive. And insurance does not cover it for most places because it's not quite classified yet. So I think most people have not gone in-depth research as far as their personal experiences because it just costs too much for you to find out what caused your personal child's autism. So people are then stuck with governmental assistance programs, which there's a huge waiting list for. And, you end up spending more time and focus and energy on trying to fix the problem than finding out what the cause of the problem is. I have been blessed in that my son is now high functioning. So I have not had the reason to go into as much research into the cause for the autism in his particular case, but I have certainly done the research into the different types of cases and studies that are out there. And seemingly they have pretty much wiped out the fact that vaccinations might cause it. Now, from personal knowledge, there are people that I know of that have gone the homeopathic route and their child is autistic. And they have people that went vaccines and their child is not. Both my kids were vaccinated. My daughter is fine. My son is not. I have nephews and nieces that went homeopathic route and they're perfectly fine. I have people that I've met who went the homeopathic route. 2 of their kids are fine. The 3rd and the 4th are autistic. So I can't really say that they've yet been able to determine what the cause of it is. As I, in my own personal opinion, been doing the research, I think a lot of it might be a reclassification of certain things that were generalized before. In other words, as the medical field has expanded and research and stuff gets more and more in depth, I think a lot of these things were before just classified as bipolarism or retardation or whatever it was, and they are now sectioning these things off, kind of. You're stuck, Jael. There you are, you're back. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. We're just having a little bit of, there was just a little bit of probably connection issues. But during your entire, history of, your little spill on how your child got when you realized that he was autistic and stuff, I could see Ayanda's face going like, her face was like, Ayanda, tell us, what are your views as it relates to autism?
I agree with a lot of what Kaya said. I think that there has been a lot of research. There's also been a lot of things that have been covered up. I chose not to vaccinate my daughter because at the time I was doing a lot of research on vaccinations. And it felt like it was too great of a risk to take, like the ingredients that are in there, the time that they ask you to do it. For me, it was that when your child's most vulnerable is when they're loading them in, like essentially with poison. And so the immune system is not yet developed enough to be able to fight it. I also chose, because I didn't vaccinate her, to breastfeed her for North Americans, it was longer than normal, for like 3 years. I know like back home, that's pretty normal even a 5-year-old I've seen breastfeeding it back home. But up here, everybody was looking at me like, what are you doing? She has teeth, you know? But she wasn't biting. So
I feel you. I did mine for 2 years both, so I feel you.
yeah, but then again with the research, so my natural antibodies were being passed down to her because she was while she was developing, so she wasn't susceptible to a lot of things. Also, your breast milk, the correlation between the saliva in the child's mouth and the glands in your breast, it tells your body what to produce to give them based on what the child needs. So it's basically heals them of every and anything that you could think of. So I chose to do that. I've also gone. Can you give mommy a minute, please? I've also had a lot of research I've done in regards to autistic children because I guess my stepson has autism and he was diagnosed really early, but on the lower end of the spectrum. And so we've tried a lot of different natural solutions to help him to progress. I'm not sure what the system is like in the States, but in Canada, there is a lot of support that the government gives you.
It's way better in Canada, way better.
So there is a waiting list, but the waiting list wasn't that long. We have the IBI program and then the ABA program, and both of those programs are developmental and in stages. So you start off with the IBI program, and then after they hit the milestones, they translate. You can get professionals to come into your daycare, to go into your school. You can send them to a full-time program, and it's supplemented by the government. Even in the public school system, I have a friend who teaches autistic children. So the classes in the public school system are 1 to 5, and 1 to 5 is the ratio, and they're fully supported. I do think, like what you're saying, like maybe in the past it wasn't known, especially like in our community. I think that there is a lot of, people just kind of brushing it under the carpet, not even trying
some people
to
go as far as saying, "Oh, they're retarded." They're just retarded.
Oh no!
Honestly, like they are so intelligent. It's more so about how to connect with them. From my understanding, so if a normal child goes A to B, they might go A to D, go back to B, come to Z, go back to A, but they're still so with my son, essentially, he was reading and writing, spelling before he was speaking.
My son
so it's
was
not that he wasn't understanding. It's just that he was finding different ways to communicate. That's intelligence.
But I have a question.
They're often more intelligent.
Now you're hearing so much about autism. At one time, it was probably Down syndrome, or at one time it was like all these kids being faced with the exact same condition during the same time span. So all you hear about is autism, and then at one time all you hear is Down syndrome. Like it almost makes
Is it a bug,
or it's a plague, or it's something in the
that's what I'm saying. Is it a matter that there are that many more people, or is it a matter that there's that much more awareness of it at the time? That you understand what I'm saying? There, it might be a combination of both. I'm certainly not in the medical field, so I would not know as far as ratio of populations and what that statistic is. But I do know that as people become more and more aware of certain things, and more research is done into certain things, they tend, or even just because the right people or the right company decides to push a certain concept. Marketing is a hell of a thing, as you rightly know, Ayanda. If they decide to start focusing on something and that's all that's being pushed in the media and that's being pushed on the ads and that sort of thing, it becomes overwhelmingly that's what you see everywhere. But as far as statistically, if that's something that is increased more or not, I don't know. Now, to speak to the point of what you said about they calling them retarded home, as you know, Jael, my son was diagnosed in Dominica. We had just moved a 40-foot tractor trailer to come back home. I had every intention, after having not been home for almost 15 years, to come back home, move my family back home, build and all of that, and I couldn't. After my son was diagnosed and I tried to find help, obviously I wanted to stay home. I had literally just cleared my trailer from the port. And I literally could not stay home. There were no resources there. They proposed sending my child to Alpha Center, and it's like, it's not the same thing. And they don't understand the difference. And they have this stigma and this condescension when it comes to mental disorder. And people brush it aside. I mean, so often we have pet names for people that wander around the street and everyone laughs and it's a big joke. And, you know, you might have some people that'll get them, you know, a slice of bread or some clothes to put on their back, but there's no real actual genuine concern and genuine effort to see these people as human beings and to see that there's so much more potential for them other than sticking them in a hole somewhere and acting like they don't exist. I had an aunt, my mom's sister, who was born perfectly fine. It was way back in the day, obviously. She got whooping cough and it ended up messing with her brain. She was mentally as well as physically stunted after that. And I mean, I can't tell you the horror stories that my family experienced and people, you know, how people would view because of her disability. And so therefore people tend to relegate these family members. I heard stories when I was investigating and researching centers and help for my son of people having a young boy in a cage in Pottersville. I mean, there was a woman who had just come back, a Libra woman, I think it's Beverly, who came down and was trying to help with children with autism and started a clinic up. And she was the only person that could try to help me, but she herself was one person trying to do for an entire country. And it broke her heart to hear of cases like that. And you will not hear about that in Dominica. You will not hear about that in most Caribbean countries. And I'm not trying to put my country, Dominica, down, love it to death. But it's like that in every Caribbean country, to be very honest with you, as far as the stigma. Some countries have more developed attitudes to it. So you might have clinics and schools and so on that have introduced programs. And I know that they've done some definite strides since, you know, in the 5 years since I've left. So I've still tried to keep in the loop with what's going on in the Caribbean. And I have a few people that I've reached out to as the series goes on, you know, we'll introduce the clinics that exist. But we have a long way to go. Sorry to use that term that we all use so much in the island. But we have a long way to go, you know, when it comes to both our attitude as well as actually implementing what we can to assist in the lives of these people. And it's, as you said earlier on, Jael, it's not just the person, it affects your entire family. It's not a one person thing.
Now,
and I can.
No, I was saying it definitely affects your entire community, and it starts at home to educate. I remember I had to tell my daughter interacting, you know, with my stepson, because she was asking me, you know, why doesn't he speak? And then I had to tell her, like, you know, well, everybody learns differently, so maybe he can teach you how to spell, and you can teach him how to speak. Because he was spelling very early, like I said. But it's definitely something that I think that in our community, those of us that are fortunate enough to be, you know, abroad, as we learn and we grow, to bring it home and bring that knowledge home. I made a list of certain things that we did that helped him significantly, like the natural things, like so some of the issues that they have is they don't sleep, as their sleeping pattern is off balance. And so we had given him melatonin, and that made him sleep a lot better. We had B12 shots. We regulated his stomach. They usually have like leaky gut and like soft stool. There's a list of different issues that, and it started off with us just basically like remedying the actual like 1 and 2 issues, right? And so okay, what natural thing can we use to help him sleep instead of essentially giving him sleeping pills? Do you know, like when we were younger, our parents would laugh about giving us rum to go to sleep? And imagine if you had a son that would never sleep. You know, like essentially, like imagine though, right? But there's natural things. There's natural things that you can do with like along the way, and then there's the long-term treatment options that exist as well. That personally, they're a little bit expensive, but if you think of the benefits that they can offer, and not even just for children that have autism, but really, like one of the things are oxygen therapy. And essentially what it is going into an oxygen chamber. And so your body gets hydrated more so than normal. The regular people, we don't breathe properly. So if you think about when you're learning to meditate, or if you're doing yoga, like they're teaching you, the first step is to teach you breath exercises, because traditionally you feel like you come out of the womb and you're breathing, but generally speaking, we're not actually breathing properly. And so with autistic children, there's a correlation between lack of oxygen in the brain. And so the chamber, it essentially oxygenates them, and then it increases the flow of any other products that you're using along the way with them. So like I said, the B12s, or it gets that into their system a little bit quicker. And then there's also I guess it's experimental research, but there's been a lot of good research going on to it. It's where it's like the stem cells. So really what they're taking is like stem cells from fetuses, like aborted fetuses, or babies that didn't
umbilical
make it,
cords.
I guess.
I think they use umbilical cord stem cells as well.
And then and so they're putting these stem cells into their system, and it's basically just taking over, or this is really layman, I'm not a doctor, but like it's basically taking over the sick cells and replacing them with healthy new cells. And that's been Go ahead.
Go ahead, Love. No, I was saying I think that's key, because that definitely is key, and a good trick to use, if you want to call it that. It should be used for all kids, really. They've started doing research into yoga and meditation instead of detention for kids in schools, and it's done wonders. So in general for kids, but especially with kids with autism, deep breathing. That's something I taught my son. One, because it needs oxygen to the brain, but two, one of the things with autism people don't understand is that their brain is actually working a lot faster than ours.
Right.
So it's actually very frustrating for them to try to get something out, and they feel like they're not getting it out. So I taught my son by physically holding him by the shoulder to take deep breaths.
If we can take it there for 2 seconds, I guess on a spiritual and an energetic level, if we think of everything in the world, if we just understand it to be energy, and we're all operating at different vibrations, what I understand of autistic children is that they're vibrating so much faster than us. It's almost like an evolution of a human. Like they are the next generation of humans, right? And that's why we don't really understand how their brain operates, because they're the next level to us. But so they're vibrating, their minds working. It's all happening so quickly for them. I know for myself, one of the things that worked really well for us is to it's actually even works for my daughter, and my daughter's not autistic, but like when my daughter's not, because they have like a focus issue usually, like, they're not really looking at you. So just get down to their level. And this works with all communications. You know what? I'm face to face, we're eye to eye right now. We're talking. Look at me. Hear me. And even when my daughter is misbehaving, just now I had to like send her back upstairs when I just looked at her and I'm like, listen, we're here right now. And I'm serious, So, and that just works. It just really just works to just bring yourself down to their level. Go on your knees if you're not that height. Bring them to your face. I have this thing that I do with my children too, where we go third eye to third eye. So we just connect, like our foreheads are touching each other, and we just have like a moment. Everybody calms down.
Yes. Now I'm listening to the two of you talk, right, about the different methods and the different things that you've done to sort of communicate with your kids. I mean, I have a baby, right? So even listening to Kaya talk about the whole autistic aspect of things, and feeling to some extent that it may have been the vaccines to some extent, I'm not saying that it's confirmed or anything. And Ayanda, who's gone totally...
I'm totally a conspiracy theorist, so I feel like if you guys have not watched Vaxxed, that documentary changed my life. Like after I've seen that, I cried. I just felt like, I actually felt like it wasn't finished, because they talked about all the hidden research that was done to support the fact that it is vaccines that are targeting our children, but not just our children, like as in the Black community, but specifically our sons. And there's research that supports that. And specifically the MMR vaccine. And what I was telling Jael when she was doing for her son, it's the cocktails. So if you're going to go and actually choose to vaccinate your child, tell them to vaccinate your child the way that we got vaccinated, one at a time.
Right.
If you're going to go and you're going to vaccinate your child for 10 things, that's 3 months.
Yeah, they tell you tetanus, polio, rubella.
My gosh. And then, just as a parent, just take 2 seconds and actually read the ingredients. There's so many literally poisons. There's monkey brains. There's like heavy metals. There's all kinds of stuff in these vaccines that, what are the purpose? What's the reason? There's no reason that my child needs to have monkey brain cells put in her body. And then furthering to that, generally speaking, when it has been an outbreak in the past, it'll be like, oh, there's a measles outbreak, but all the kids that are vaccinated are still getting it. Why? Because it's a strain 2.0 and they're vaccinated for 1.0. Like,
so what
are we doing right now?
Well, that's what I always tell people. Always tell people, do your research. Because at the end of the day, as a parent, if you don't vaccinate your child and they either get autistic or something else, you're going to blame yourself. If you vaccinate your child and they end up getting autistic, you're going to blame yourself. You're going to blame yourself either way. So don't take anything anyone is saying as gospel. Do your research, check it out for yourself, and whatever decision you make at the end of the day, you can, as a person, as a parent, because there's no one perfect way of parenting at the end of the day, you know that you put your everything into making that decision, and that's the best thing that you can decision.
Yeah,
be informed first.
Now, Kaya,
you need to be that that advocate when it comes to, the doctors will tell you what they learned in school, but they're not going to be like, I know, like, again, for my son, I was like, listen, let's create a book. Let's have a folder so we know what we're doing at home. We know what the doctor did. We know what the naturopathic did. We know what the therapists are doing, and it's all in one spot. We're not depending on this person to talk to this person. We're the advocate. We're the expert at the end of the day. We know our child.
But you're living
we
the
know
condition.
Our child. Essentially, right? They can tell us, oh, traditionally, this is what we've observed, or this is what the book says, or whatever. But I know my child better than you know my child. You know what I mean? It's like when you go to the hairdresser, and then you have to tell the hairdresser how to do your hair. She's a hairdresser. You come home and you're still fixing because it's your head. You know your hair better than anyone else, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with your kids. It's the same thing.
Because everyone was like, oh, my so-and-so didn't speak till whatever age, or my this one. And that's how it was with my son until I decided, you know what, I'm seeing something that I know is there, and I decided to go get him checked. And that's what, so said, so done, mother's intuition, call it what you want. And he was diagnosed with exactly what I thought it was.
Okay, I want to know something. What did you do, or what did the doctors find out, and what exactly did they do? That was,
well, I don't like to say lucky. I like to say blessed. I was blessed in that I had one of the best in the industry, being the one that diagnosed me, Dr. Rhonda McIntyre. As you well know, in Dominica, she's one of the best, as far as all that she's done in states as well as in Dominica for pediatrics. So she's also a close family friend. So she diagnosed my son. They did CAT scans, they did blood work, they do cognitive skill tests. It's a barrage of test after test after test. But she felt it's safe to tell me fairly early on, before we got a lot of other results, that that's what it was that he had. Being a family friend, she was a little more upfront with me than she perhaps would have been with another patient. So I was blessed in that. And I also had family members on my side and my husband's side that have some sort of experience with autism, so they were able to guide us as far as therapy, because there's a plethora of therapies out there. My advice through my own personal experience is behavioral therapy, because it basically combines speech therapy, organizational therapy, all of those things together in one, and it's a one-on-one thing with the therapist. Now, if you want to look at science of autism, like, I mean, I printed out something just so people can see, like, the signs of autism are like, what, 1, 2, 3, 4
Yeah, that's
pages
why they
long.
call it a spectrum
Like,
as well, right? So you might be on one
exactly,
end of the spectrum or the other, right? And some are
exactly. And
functioning, high
some are
functioning,
high
some are very
functioning,
low
some are
functioning, right?
low. Exactly. My son had just about every single one on that long ass list that you see there. So we really didn't know which way he was gonna go. And with the therapy that she advised me to give him, with intense discipline, that's another thing. A lot of people think that because a kid has some sort of disorder that you should be a little more lax
Oh my
with
God,
them, or
I
like that. It's
support
the
that.
complete opposite. It's the complete opposite. You need to be more disciplined with them and a lot more strict with, their scheduling and all of that. And it's especially what you said, Ayana, get down to their level, make them give eye contact. But general signs, people can look those up. But if you see from around 18 months, your child stop making that direct eye contact, especially if you breastfeed, where, when you breastfeed, you look into the child's eyes. If you see that they're not making that eye contact, if you notice that the few little words that they've started saying, that they've stopped saying it all of a sudden, immediately get that child checked. If you see them getting on their tiptoes a lot to walk, or they start walking in circles, hitting themselves on the head, smearing fecal matter, eating fecal matter. I mean, there's a lot of different, not liking to be held or touched. My son went from wanting to be hugged all the time to screaming and scratching at you if you tried to touch him. I was the only one besides me and my husband. You couldn't really pick up my son.
Wow.
There's a lot of signs for autism, and I advise people to go research, look it up. It's very easy to find because the signs they've got down, because there's so many things that are fairly glaring, that make you realize, and the sooner the better. The sad thing is, guys, that autism starts showing between 18 months and 2 years, and early intervention is between 18 months and 4.5, 5. So most people
So it doesn't
don't
even
get
give
this.
you enough time to
No, and most
actually
people
just
don't get
about.
diagnosed until late, because there are some late bloomers. That is a thing where some children don't talk till 2.5. So how do you know if it's a mental disorder or just a late bloomer? Well, you have to look at all the different signs and see if there's a combination of them rather than just one or two things. And if you do, you need to go get that child checked as soon as possible. The sad thing, as I said, is that very often insurance does not cover a lot of these tests. Certainly does not cover therapy. There are strides being made, but it's a fairly new thing.
So
So
that's like different in Canada. So in Canada, when you go to the doctor, your diagnosis is covered. Your natural alternatives would not be covered. So if you decide to go to a naturopathic doctor, those, if you have health insurance from work, then they'll be covered that way. But if you decide to go the more traditional route and you just want to go to a doctor, and then the IBI and the ABA are the behavioral therapies that I was mentioning before. Those are all government funded in Canada. So up here
yeah,
we
I
have
want
a lot more support than it sounds like in the
Definitely.
States.
Oh
Again, though,
yes,
pardon?
I said, oh yes, I wanted to go to Canada. When I did my research, Canada is actually, most people don't realize that the rest of the world patterns their autism clinics and so on after Canada. Canada was the first country to recognize the autism spectrum disorder, point blank, period. So the research, the therapy, everything is way more advanced. And on top of it, as you know, Canada has a much better healthcare support system than the US. So from the financial side of it and the insurance side of it, you guys will always be ahead. But also just on the raw data and the raw research and that sort of stuff, Canada is way ahead. The States and most of the rest of the world, they use the research and the clinics, and they use your resources to pattern off of. So I would have loved to have gone there, but the red tape and all of that. I'm born in the Bronx in New York, so it would have been a 2-day thing to just get my kids over here and get it done, because my son was diagnosed at 3.5, so it was already late in the game, and I needed him to get therapy yesterday. So trust me, I was like, I want to go to Canada.
Now, what do you think is going to happen next for autistic kids, or even for your son? What happens next for him? Like, what are your plans? Where do you see his diagnosis going? What route is it going to take? What happens next? Is he just going to leave
Well,
his life
live
as an
his life,
autistic.
or yeah, that's, boy, let me tell you, in the early stages, that's one of the things as a parent with any child with a disorder that you cry over, you're crying over, stress and worry over, is how much of a functioning person are they going to be. Again, I don't like to use the word lucky. I'm blessed. My son has become high functioning. He is doing everything. I mean, honestly, if you didn't know that he had autism, you wouldn't know if he walked in the room, unless you either were experienced with someone with autism or you were in the field. There are a few little ticks that he still has as far as body language, that every now and then he might fall into, especially if he's nervous or anxious or afraid. But generally, there aren't that much signs that you can see. He's totally verbal, doing everything. As a matter of fact, he's, again, as Ayanda said, ahead of the game for a lot of kids in his school. They do a similar thing because, again, they pattern it off of Canada. I did straight up one-on-one therapy. They put him in a cluster class, and now he's in a cluster school where it's a normal school with therapists on call, and then they put them into normal classes. And with him, they're thinking with the new year that he's just going to be totally off therapists altogether and into what they call Gen Ed, which is general education classes, because he's become basically a high functioning person. So he no longer needs the support staff. And that's just my unique experience. I'm blessed in that occurred.
Pretty much getting them the help that they need at an early stage. Because if you don't, you're screwed.
Well, the earlier the better. Like even with any person, if you're like, we have our children, and you start disciplining them right away. You start teaching them right away. So like the earlier you give them the support that they need, then that's what I was trying to say earlier. It's just figuring out how to connect with them. And once you get that down, then that success story could be anybody's story, essentially. Like we're basically like right behind you in that. How old is your son?
He just turned 9 actually last weekend.
Yeah, so Saturday. So ours is just turned 5. So like we're right behind you in that, and that's essentially exactly what our goal is. So once he's done the second set of therapy, essentially like finish through that program and then integrate into the school system. And green.
I know you're a natural girl. I don't have to tell you this, but honestly, like I straight up get no dairy. As much as you can, no dairy.
Okay, all right. I wanted to be clear for everybody so that
so as natural as you can for our island people, essentially as close to an ITIL diet as you can have. That's what it is. That's what it is for autistic children, but really even just for everybody. Like every ailment can be treated in the kitchen if you take the time to research and prepare. It takes a lot of work. It's harder. The stuff don't last as long and it's more expensive. But essentially, if it's I always say compare it to fuel. So how much does it cost to fill your tank, and how far does that get you? So what are you going to put in your body?
I don't even want to scare people and say that, because honestly, Ayanda, there are workarounds. Like for example, there's things that grow, and my friends who might be listening can testify that I bring this in there all the time. There are things that grow literally like bush. Okay, back home, it's green. It's all about alkalinizing their system. Yeah. So bush tea, blue veven, okay, anything green. That's what you want to do. Take parsley, blend it, strain it, put that on the fridge. That'll last a whole week. There are ways. There's comfrey. There's so many things that we have back home that grow literally like weeds that you can buy. I feel like
it's more expensive when you live overseas. But that was kind of the perspective that I was giving, right? Because exactly. Back home, when you go to the market, you spend $50. Back home, you're eating good food. Far less for if you have a farm of your own or like a garden of your own, But over here, when you have to go to the health food store, $50 is not getting you. It's not filling your fridge. That's for sure.
That's two good boxes of tea bags. You know what I mean? If you really want the good stuff.
So in all essence, what sort of diet should your child or is your child on right now?
Girl, that was a battle in and of itself, because that's the next thing with autistic children. They're very, 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 very careful with textures. So anything soft, squishy. For the first year and some of his life, granola bars, and yogurt, which he soon came off of as soon as he was diagnosed. And he would
no dairy.
sometimes eat cereal. Yeah, I literally had to put my son on my lap, put one hand like this, the other, my leg holding him, and force food into his mouth 3 times a day, every day. That's how my son ate. Everything was then dry. I had to give him like toast and anything dry. But again, disciplined. I was not the kind of parent who would be like, oh, you don't like this? Okay, no, and just keep going until we try. No, you're sitting there and I'm going to make sure you eat something substantial. But vegetables, for some reason, and a good reason, he never gave problems with that. And I think, again, with autism, the brain and the body knows what it needs, kind of thing. Cucumbers, lettuce, anything vegetable, he never gave me a problem. Tomatoes, celery, anything like that, never had a problem. And generally, the people that I've spoken to anyway who have autistic children, they say the same thing. Their kids don't tend to give problems when it comes to vegetables. It comes down to when you try to feed them food that they have a problem. Now, today, he eats certain things well, but again, I still have a battle with him. Like today, I tried to feed him rice and peas, which he doesn't like, and the look on his face. He'll eat it. It'll take an hour, but he'll eat it. So you just have to stick out with them, because even pizza, things that other kids like, I'll make him cheeseless pizza or the veggie pizza, and he used to turn up his face and gag. That's another thing that they do. If you walk in with food, they'll literally go like that, and they just used to do that. And I had to teach him. You have to stop that, because you can't go to school with kids sitting on it, especially in the States, everybody's in a cafeteria and they're gagging at the table. So, it's just basically consistency and trying to give them what's good for them, because they respond well to that. And other things that you want them to learn to eat, you just have to be persistent with it, honestly.
I
When
think
it comes
again,
to
that goes for like every child. But I know
exactly.
for ours, there was like little tricks. So like he really likes frozen, like anything cold out of the freezer or whatever.
Yes.
Like freeze smoothies or freeze like things that he wouldn't necessarily want. Just put it in an ice pop and give it to him.
Yeah.
So like
that
just
works.
him. Either just trying to get the nutrients in. It doesn't really matter how you get it in. It's just the fact that he eats
I used to do that with smoothies.
Okay,
yeah, you get a lot
mom.
of stuff in a smoothie. You get a lot of stuff in a smoothie,
Guys, we really appreciate all of this information, especially for, I'm not exactly a new mom, but I do have a new baby. And I know Ayanda's always preaching, do not make them give you any cocktails. Imagine, my son had a doctor's appointment just this past week. And thank God he had a cold, because my doctor, she's so strict. She's like, so we're giving him his immunizations today. I'm like, well, no, he actually has a cold. And she's like, well, I guess we'll have to do it another time. So it's like, this is me procrastinating.
And you know what? Like, just to go back to that for 2 seconds, I know we're like running for time or whatever, but like in Canada, at least, I'm not really sure about the States, but when I chose not to vaccinate my daughter, I got so many people judging me. Doctors, anytime you go into the doctor's office or to the hospital, for God forbid you have to go to the emergency, they're like, is her vaccination up to date? And I'm like, we chose not to vaccinate. And everyone's like, oh, you're one of those moms, or whatever comment they want to give. Until you start schooling them. But sometimes you don't have time for all that. What I want to say is, though, a lot of people are they're scared into doing it. So they feel like, will my child be able to go to school if I don't vaccinate them? And there is actually a form online created by the government that you can just download and print and get it notarized. And it says on there that my religion, there's 3 statements. I can't remember the second one, but the third one is my conscience would not allow me to vaccinate my child. So I'm like, listen, if my conscience won't allow, and that's on the government paper, what do you guys know that you're not telling everybody? Why would you?
They do have exemptions.
Play a factor. If it's not, if it's supposed to be good for you, if it's supposed to be good for my child, why are you
touching on my conscience?
To say that my conscience?
And my thing for parents that get all upset about that when talk about their kids, I'm like, well, if your kid is vaccinated, what you worried about? If my child get measles, then that's not supposed to affect your kid. They all vaccinated, right? So what's the problem?
And they'll be like, oh, you're going to
information,
bring
a
the
lot of
sickness in. Yo, my daughter's like the healthiest child ever. She's so healthy. So
a lot of food for thought. I really appreciate
Yes.
the conversation. Kea, we're gonna continue this conversation, the autism conversation. We're gonna try and make it into a series of talks because she's gone through the process, and it's all about educating other moms. And now and again, we'll probably get Ayana to jump in because she seems to have a heap of
super passionate
knowledge
about it.
where it comes
Very passionate.
where it comes to vaccines for one. So we're gonna turn this into a series. So we'll give you bits and pieces of it when Kara is gonna be on, when Ayana is gonna be on, in terms of discussing this thing called autism and pretty much how we can combat it. I don't know if we can, how we can fight it. I don't know if we can, and how we can actually treat or help diagnose our kids and just protect our kids from actually getting it, because you never know. It may be vaccines, it may not be vaccines. At this stage, maybe they've given all these different things, including air pollution. I guess we're not supposed to breathe. Outside.
Because I didn't have any of those. And by the way, no preemie, nothing, no pregnancy sickness, none of them.
Exactly. So they've given all these different things, except saying that, hey, maybe the vaccines have something play a part in kids being autistic. My parents raised me on provisions. I hated it. Fish. I had fish every single day. I used to beg for chicken. And when I got a cold, my dad would go and get Mommy Zoo. He'd get me DT pomade. He'd get me. If I had a fever, he'd put the soursop leaves underneath my pillow. If I had a stomach bug, he'd give me a young guava leaf to chew on. If I was vomiting, he'd crush sweet potatoes and give that to me to eat with milk. I mean, like the things that they gave you when you were a kid growing up to prevent you from contracting so many different things. And it worked. And I don't think I know anybody my age group who's autistic. So I don't know where this thing is coming from.
That's also a thing. Even the allergies, right? Even the allergies. If you think of that, like there's a thing right now, you cannot send peanuts to schools because every child has peanut allergies.
Peanut allergy.
We grew up on peanut butter sandwiches growing. I don't know about it. I love peanut butter and celery sticks. That was like the thing growing up. What happened to that? Exactly. Why are all these kids having these peanut allergies?
Well, we don't know what's causing it, and hopefully we can all do, as responsible moms, we can all do our own personal research, and nobody can stop us from doing our personal research and finding out what is the best ways to protect our kids. I'm so grateful that I had two of these lovely ladies on with me today on Cacoa Tea. I know Ayanda does not like to be in front of the camera.
Yeah,
so
I don't.
you want to be
behind the scenes.
You're gonna fool me. I'm so passionate about life and living. And Kea, I'm extremely happy that you would come in and even give us, your own, because it's coming from your own personal pocketbook. You're actually telling us that are happening to you, and really appreciate that. And all you moms out there, just keep doing what you do for your kids. I want to encourage you, the viewers, to please hit the share button now. So you're on there now, hit the share button and share this video with your friends and your family so they can know or they can learn something. They can actually get some information that can probably help their kid or their neighbor's kid or their kid in daycare or their kid in school, the kid in the classroom. They could probably help somebody out there. I'm so thankful to all those of you who came on and actually viewed. And don't forget, this podcast is also available in 24 hours. It'll be available on my website. That's www.jaeljoseph.com/plog. That's plug. So you can just go on there in 24 hours and the podcast will be there for you to listen. You can listen in your car, you can listen on the train, on your way to work, gym, working out. You can get angry with Ayanda and have a good time and enjoy. And don't forget to always share the video. I want to thank you, lovely ladies, for being on with me. I really do appreciate it. And I hope that you guys will join me again on another Cacoa Tea. Thank you so much, Ayanda.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Kea, for taking time out of your busy Sunday evening to be here with me. And to you, the viewers, thank you so very much for joining us. Until next time, tune in for another episode of Cacoa Tea. Don't forget to always drink your Cacoa Tea. Keeps your chest nice and warm. Right, look at those mugs. Keeps it nice and warm. Man, hey, we're having an ice storm.
We're talking too much, right?
Yeah, we're having an ice storm right about now.
Cool day.
Oh gosh, I'm jealous.
I think this is when I say goodbye. Thanks guys for tuning in. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.